Hey guys, tonight we wander somewhere you really, truly wouldn't want to go, at least not without several vaccines, a therapist, and maybe a full medieval hazmat suit. You're about to step into a brothel from the Middle Ages. It's not the romantic candlelit fantasy TV shows make it out to be. It's smoky, filthy, and absolutely crawling with stories and fleas. Lots of fleas. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the narrow, muddy street of a medieval town. Its late moonlight barely slips through the smoke, drifting from hearths and tallow candles. Somewhere nearby, a lute plays a slow, off-key tune. You follow the sound until you spot it. A crooked wooden sign swinging in the breeze, painted with a red lantern. No name, just the lantern. In medieval Europe, that was enough. It told you exactly what kind of business waited beyond that door. When you push it open, the hinges groan louder than you expected, and a wave of heat, perfume, and human breath washes over you. The room is dim, lit mostly by candles melting faster than they can be replaced. Shadows dance over rough stone walls and warped beams. Every corner holds someone doing something they shouldn't be doing, at least not in public or maybe even in private. You're standing inside what 14th century city records would politely call a public house for women of pleasure. But it's not pleasure you feel right now. It's nausea. The air is dense with the smell of wine gone sour, cheap perfume made from rancid fat and herbs, and sweat that's lived through too many summers. The floor sticks slightly under your boots. A stray cat darts past, chasing something small enough that you really don't want to identify it. This is the medieval brothel, the forbidden heart of medieval nightlife. Historians still argue whether these places were tolerated as necessary evils or quietly encouraged as a safety valve for society's desires. Whatever the case, they existed everywhere from the shadowy alleys of London's Southern to the canals of Venice and the bustling fairs of Paris. You move carefully between rough tables, trying not to brush against anyone. A juggler with a lazy eye drops an apple, catches it again, winks at you, and keeps going. A woman with her hair wrapped in a yellow kerchief leans on the bar, pretending to laugh at a joke from a soldier whose armor still smells of horse. She's not really laughing, and he's not really joking. A few coins change hands under the table. That's the real sound of the night here, not music, not laughter, but the faint clink of money sliding from one palm to another, looking for company. A voice purrs beside you. You turn to find a woman, maybe 30, maybe 40. It's hard to tell in this light draped in faded silk that used to be red. She smiles, but her eyes are sharp, assessing. In this world, everyone's always assessing. You mumble something about just looking, and she chuckles softly. Everyone says that. Love, just looking, never lasts long. A rat scurries past her feet, and she doesn't even flinch. You, on the other hand, nearly jump out of your shoes. That's your first mistake. You're too clean, too nervous, too obviously new. She can smell it well. Anything could smell through the mix of candle soot and human misery hanging in the air. A man slumps in the corner, snoring into his half-empty cup. Another sits upright, eyes glassy, muttering a prayer he probably shouldn't be saying here. You spot a small wooden crucifix nailed above the doorway, half hidden by cobwebs. In some cities, brothels were required to display religious symbols to remind patrons that their sins were being observed, at least symbolically. Think of it as medieval CCTV, always watching, never helping. You inch toward a corner table, hoping to blend in. Someone's carved initials into the wood, along with a few crude doodles that definitely wouldn't make it into illuminated manuscripts. You overhear two women whispering about a new girl who came in this morning. barely 16:1 says, but you'll bring in the rich ones. You try not to react, but your stomach twists anyway. It's easy to forget that in this time, the line between survival and sin wasn't clear-cut. For many, this was the only job available to women without families, property, or luck. One historical record from 15th century Nuremberg lists over 200 registered brothels, each paying taxes directly to the city. Imagine that a government ledger where sin has a receipt. Somewhere above you, footsteps creak. You glance up and see the ceiling bowing slightly under the weight of whoever's up there. Someone laughs, then coughs, deep and wet. That sound is everywhere in this era, from castles to gutters. The cough of people who've lived too close, breathed too much smoke, and shared too many diseases. A barmaid slams a jug of ale on your table, spilling some across your sleeve. "Drink fast," she says. "We close when the bell tolls." You're not sure which bell she means, but you nod and take a cautious sip. It's warm and bitter, like bread that gave up halfway through baking. Medieval ale didn't have hops yet. It was thick, cloudy, and often flavored with herbs like rosemary or mugwort. It was also safer than water, though. That's not saying much. As you sit there, you start to notice the rhythm of the place. The laughter rises and falls like a tired song. The candles sputter and hiss. A lute strums in the background, just off-key enough to make you wonder if it's on purpose. The women move through the room like shadows, their smiles fixed, their eyes sharp, always aware of where the coins are. Historians still argue whether these women had any real autonomy. Some owned their own rooms and could choose their clients. Others were little more than indentured servants, paying back endless debts for clothes, food, or protection. Freedom here was a sliding scale measured in silver pennies. You finish your ale, glance toward the door, and realize leaving isn't as easy as walking out. The doorman, a hulking shape with a scar across his cheek, watches every move. Maybe he's protecting the workers. Maybe he's protecting the profits. Either way, you're staying a little longer. You hear a scream outside at drunk, shouting at the moon. Or maybe something worse. Nobody flinches. It's just another night. You realize that here, the rules are simple. Pay, play, survive till morning. You take a deep breath and instantly regret it. The red lantern flickers, throwing long, crooked shadows across the room. You can almost feel history pressing in the centuries of laughter, sorrow, survival, and scandal soaked into the walls. And you realize, with a slow, uneasy smile, that you've only just crossed the threshold. The real lessons are still waiting upstairs. You take another step inside, and the sound shifts. The laughter fades, replaced by the scratch of wooden chairs, the murmur of negotiations, and the wet crackle of a candle drowning in its own wax. The scent hits you next thick, complex, impossible to separate. It's a cocktail of old wine, rotting straw, sweat, rose oil, and something sharp and metallic underneath, like rust or blood that's been scrubbed and rescrubbed, but never truly gone. It's strange to think of perfume as warfare, but that's exactly what it was here. You breathe through your mouth, trying to adjust, but it's like standing in a fog made of desperation. One medieval chronicler described brothels as temples of scent. Sounds poetic until you remember that the temples were also full of rats. You brush your sleeve across your nose as a woman glides past you. She smells faintly of violets till you realize it's not violets at all, but vinegar steeped with petals to hide the odor of unwashed skin. In this world, bathing isn't routine, it's risky. Many people believe water opens the pores to disease, so instead, they layer scent on scent until the air itself feels sticky. The room around you pulses with light. Someone throws herbs onto a brazier in the corner. Rosemary, sage, maybe lavender if the house could afford it. The smoke twines upward, disguising the stink of bodies and ale, though not very successfully. You cough once, and a man at the next table chuckles. First night, eh? He says, voice rough as gravel. You nod weakly. He grins, showing 3 teeth. Don't worry, the nose dies quick. That might be true. You can already feel your senses numbing, adjusting. The floorboards beneath your boots creak with every shift of weight, sticky from spilled drink and who knows what else. Someone must mop occasionally, but mop here probably means tossing a bucket of gray water across the planks and calling it holy. You notice something? Curious, despite the filth. There's a weird kind of order to it all. The women move with purpose, their skirts brushing against candlelight. The air might be foul, but it's carefully managed. They understand scent like merchants understand coin. In a way, they're chemists of survival. Historians still argue whether medieval perfumes were truly effective or just symbolic gestures away to declare, I'm civilized, even if I smell like goat fat and lilac. We do know many were made from animal bases, civet from wildcats, ambergris from whale intestines, and musk from, you guessed it, glance near a deer's tail. Imagine bottling that behind your ears before work. A barmaid slides past, clutching a tray of wooden cups. Her hands are red draw from scrubbing. You glimpse the bucket she's using to rinse them. One shared basin of murky water. Germ theory won't arrive for centuries, so everyone just calls that clean enough. Small miracle, really, that anyone survives long enough to pay their tab. There's music too, but it's not cheerful. A single string fiddle drones in the corner, the musician half asleep and leaning on his bow. His instrument squeaks every few notes, but no one complains. Maybe the tune hides awkward silences. Maybe it just fills the space between deals. You find yourself watching the workers more closely now. Their painted faces are almost masks. The rouge on their cheeks shines to brightly pigment mixed with tallow and wine dregs. A few have powdered their necks with ground rice or crushed chalk. An imitation of noble whiteness that turns ghostly under candlelight. The effect is eerie, almost theatrical, and still there's beauty in the details. One woman hums softly as she braids another's hair, tying a ribbon scavenged from some merchant's gift wrap. Another rubs her wrists with mint leaves to cool her skin. In this house, appearance is armor and scent is camouflage. You can feel how much effort goes into maintaining the illusion of desire, of cleanliness, of control. A new smell creeps in, sweet, smoky, unmistakable. Incense. You look toward the hearth where someone's burning frankincense, a rare luxury, usually saved for churches. The irony doesn't escape you. If you can't be pure, the fiddler mutters, might as well smell holy. You laugh quietly before realizing he wasn't joking. Outside the shuttered windows, the night murmurs with city life. Hooves clatter, voices drift. Somewhere nearby, a tavern crowd sings about St. George and the Dragon. You imagine that smell leaking out their hill sweat, smoke all blending together in a medieval perfume, so potent it could knock out a modern-day health inspector. The brothel's walls seem to breathe with it. Even the wood is saturated, the scent soaked into the grain like history itself. You think of future archaeologists sniffing a splinter and instantly fainting. You shift your weight, brushing against a tapestry that might once have been lovely. It depicts a hunting scene, but now the colors are faded, and one of the embroidered deer is missing its head. The cloth smells of mildew and smoke. Still, it softens the room's edges. It's trying to pretend this place is gentler than it is. A cat leaps onto the table near you, tail flicking. Its fur shines with candle grease, and someone's tied a ribbon around its neck. House guardian, a woman explains, keeps the spirits away. You glance at the rat, darting behind her stool, and wonder how effective that guardian really is. The woman notices your look and laughs. Oh, not those spirits. The other kind. She taps her temple. You don't want ghosts following you from here. They cling. That's your quirky tidbit of the night. Some medieval brothels kept cats, not only for pest control, but as spiritual protectors. Creatures thought to guard against demons, drawn by lust. Historians still argue whether that belief came from old pagan traditions or simple, wishful thinking. Either way, you find yourself feeling grateful for the cat's presence. The smell grows heavier as the hours stretch. Candles burn lower. The brazier's smoke thickens, stinging your eyes. You wonder how anyone breathes in here for long, much less finds romance. Maybe that's the point. It's not about pleasure. It's about escape. And escape doesn't always need fresh air. You glance toward the bar, where the madam is counting coins. Behind her, shelves line the wall with bottles of colored glass greens, ambers, and reds. You assume they hold perfume, but when one topples slightly, you see what's really inside. Oil, vinegar, even urine. They're ingredients for cleansing mixtures. A medieval euphemism, if ever there was one. Someone near you sneezes a deep, ragged sound that echoes through the smoky air. The madam looks up, her expression flat. A few heads turn. Then, just as quickly, everyone resumes what they were doing. Coughing, sneezing, these are part of the soundtrack here. You catch your reflection in a dented brass platter hanging on the wall. Your face looks ghostly in the flickering light, and for a brief moment, you imagine yourself as one of them, painted, perfumed, pretending. The thought makes you shiver. You take another breath slow, deliberate hand. You start to acclimate. The smell doesn't go away. It becomes background, a heartbeat. You realize this is how people survived here, by dulling the senses, one by one. Sight, smell, sound, they all blur until only the rhythm of survival remains. The cat yawns, the music drones, and the smoke thickens until it feels like part of you. Somewhere in that haze, you realize you've stopped noticing the filth. That's the danger of the medieval brothel. It doesn't horrify forever, NUMBs, and as your eyes start to sting, you notice the door at the back open. A woman steps through, tall and sharp as a blade, dressed in black with a crimson sash. The laughter dims instantly. Even the fiddler straightens. The madam has arrived. The room stills the moment she enters. You feel it like a temperature drop, though the air's already thick enough to chew. She doesn't need to shout or gesture. Her presence alone rewires the space. Conversations fade mid-sentence, chairs scrape back, and even the cat hops down from the table and disappears behind a barrel. The woman in black crosses the floor with a deliberate rhythm, the faint click of her boots in perfect time with the lute. This is the mistress of the house. In modern terms, you might call her the manager, but that word's far too polite. She's part boss, part priestess, part jailer, and as her eyes slide toward you measuring, unblinking, you understand immediately that nothing in this building moves without her permission. Her gown catches the candlelight like oil on water. Black wool, it's trimmed with a thread of crimson. Not real silk, though she'd like you to think so. Around her neck glints a silver cross, which seems less a sign of faith than a challenge to it. She carries a bunch of iron keys at her belt, each clinking faintly as she walks. Somewhere, one of those keys opens the money box. Another locks the sleeping rooms upstairs. A third, perhaps, closes the door on anyone who can't pay. New face, she says quietly, voice smooth but heavy with years of shouting. You paying or praying? You stammer something about curiosity, about history, about, research. She smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. Research, is it? Then you'll be wanting to pay double. Curiosity's the most expensive thing in this house. A few patrons chuckle nervously. You manage a weak grin. She doesn't return it. Instead, she signals to the barmaid with 2 fingers, a gesture that clearly means keep an eye on this one. Then she turns her attention back to the room, scanning for problems. That's her real job. Balance. She keeps peace among drunks, protection from constables, and just enough profit flowing upward to keep the church and city officials conveniently blind. In many towns, London, Avignon, Prague, the brothel mistress was officially licensed by the city. Her establishment paid taxes like a bakery, and she was expected to maintain order. If a fight broke out or a patron fell dead, it was her reputation and her fine. On the line, historians still argue whether that made her a businesswoman or a scapegoat. She could command fear and respect, yet remained powerless against the men who owned the property or the priests who condemned her by day but visited her by night. She pauses by the fiddler, drops a coin in his cup. "Play something slower," she says. "They're drinking too fast." The musician obeys instantly, bow trembling across the string. The melody shifts softer, darker, almost melancholy. The madam nods once and moves on. You watch her approach a group of soldiers near the hearth. They stiffen as she leans in. Her tone is low, words like silk over steel. Whatever she says, it works. They mutter apologies, toss a few coins on the table, and sit down again. Order restored. A woman nearby whispers. They say she used to work the street herself. Kicked a bishop once. Her friend snorts. Bishop probably paid extra for it. You try not to smile, but it slips out. The gossip spreads fast here, half legend, half survival manual. The madam turns toward the staircase leading upstairs. She gestures, and two girls rise immediately to follow. You catch a glimpse of their faces bent, cracking under candle heat, eyes hollowed by exhaustion. The madam lays a hand on one girl's shoulder. It's not tenderness, exactly, but it's the closest thing to it in this world. There is structure here, however grim. Each woman pays the mistress a share of her earnings, some in coin, some in kind, some in silence. In return, she offers protection against thieves, against disease, when possible, against the law. It's a fragile ecosystem built on fear, necessity, and the smallest slivers of compassion. Your second light joke slips out of your mouth before you can stop it. So basically, she's running the first HR department. The barmaid overhears and laughs quietly, quickly, the way you laugh when you shouldn't, but you can't help seeing it. The madam keeps track of shifts, monitors performance, manages conflicts, enforces hygiene by medieval standards. Somewhere, a parchment ledger lists every worker by name, every client by alias, and every debt by amount. One torn page of that ledger survives from a 14th century. Parisian house, Sid, reads like a business account mixed with a tragedy. The madam returns to the bar. She pours herself a cup of wine, takes a sip, and sighs. For a moment, she looks tired, just another woman surviving an impossible system. Then someone drops a jug, the wine splashes, and her eyes snap sharp again. "Clean it," she orders. The barmaid scurries. You realize she's speaking several languages at once, bits of French, Latin, street slang, curses from every corner of Europe. Brothels were multilingual hubs long before airports. Merchants, sailors, pilgrims, they all met here. So did information. If you want to gossip about a noble's secrets or a bishop's debts, you came to people like her. A few chroniclers even suggest that brothel mistresses doubled as informants, selling tidbits to city watchmen or rival nobles. Historians still argue whether that's true or just scandalous rumor, but it fits. In a world where words could buy safety, she'd be foolish not to trade them. The madam leans on the counter, catching your gaze again. "You're still here," she says. "Either brave or stupid." You shrug. "Maybe both." She smiles thinly. "Then you'll fit right in." You're about to respond when the door slams open. A gust of cold air swirls in, scattering candle smoke. A man stumbles inside, laughing too loudly, reeking of wine and rain. His boots leave muddy prints across the floor. "Ladies," he shouts, "I've coin enough for every one of you." The madam doesn't move for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, she straightens. The room holds its breath. With a single glance, she sends two of her larger attendants forward. They flank the drunk, guiding him toward the table nearest the hearth. "You'll sit," she says, voice like thunder behind velvet. You'll drink water, and you'll pay in advance. The man starts to protest, but her look silences him. Coins clink onto the wood. She nods, satisfied, and turns away. The crowd exhales. You think about the danger threaded through her every move. One wrong call, and the night could end in blood. Yet she manages it all with poise, turning chaos into order through nothing but presence. Another small laugh escapes you. She could run a medieval army. Same difference, says the barmaid, overhearing again, just with more perfume and fewer helmets. Outside, the church bell tolls 9. The sound seeps through the shutters, mixing with the hum of voices. You catch a flash of weariness on the madam's face as she counts the night's take. She's older than most of her workers, and age here is a dangerous luxury. Still, she holds her post with pride, 'cause power, even borrowed power, tastes sweeter than fear. She looks at you one last time before heading upstairs. The keys at her belt jingling softly. The barmaid mutters, "Best behave." She dreams in profit and wakes in vengeance. You sip what's left of your ale and watch the staircase swallow her shadow. Somewhere above, a door closes and the murmur of voices resumes. The tension dissolves like a storm moving on. The fiddler starts a new tune, slower, sadder. Around you, conversation returns, laughter flickers, and the room exhales as if it's been holding its breath all along. You realize how thin the line is between control and collapse in this world, and how easily that line is drawn by one woman with a ring of keys and nerves of iron. And though you're still sitting safely in your corner, you know the night's only deepening. Upstairs, behind thin wooden doors, the real stories awaiting the stories the madam guards more fiercely than gold. The stairs creak under your weight as you follow the muffled sounds above. Each step feels like crossing some invisible border. Downstairs was public performance. Upstairs is private theater. The air grows warmer, thicker, steeped in perfume that can't quite hide the smell of sweat and candle smoke. Shadows slide across the walls, flickering between elegance and exhaustion. When you reach the landing, you pause. The corridor stretches ahead, narrow and dim. Doors line both sides, each slightly ajar, revealing flashes of fabric, laughter, and whispered deals. The sounds are soft but constant murmurs, sighs, the clink of coins. And underneath it all, it's that same low cough that seems to haunt the century. A woman steps into the hall, adjusting her shawl. Her face glows in the candlelight white powder, cracking at the corners of her mouth, rouge smudged from a long night. She looks at you and smiles without warmth. "Lost?" she asks. "Just looking." You manage. Her smile widens. Everyone's looking. No one ever sees. Then she slips past you, bare feet whispering across the boards. You watch her go and realize she's younger than you thought. Maybe 19, or maybe older. Time works differently here, inside one of the rooms. Two women sit close together on the edge of a bed, sewing torn hymns. One hums a lullaby so soft it almost disappears beneath the creaks of the building. A third woman lies back against the wall, eyes closed, her head tilted toward the faint breeze sneaking through a broken shutter. The intimacy of it strikes you not sensual, but communal. Survival here depends on alliances, on small acts of care disguised as routine. That's what no one tells you about brothels in the Middle Ages. They were communities before there were businesses. The women depended on each other for safety, food, even medical care. In some cities, like Avignon or Cologne, brothel workers formed their own informal guilds, pooling money for funerals or bail. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a network, the only one many would ever have. You peek into another room where a girl sits with her back to the mirror, combing her hair. The comb catches on a tangle, and she winces. You notice the bruises blooming along her shoulder, half hidden under lace. She catches your reflection and stares through you, as if daring you to pity her. You don't. she wouldn't want you to. Historians still argue whether brothel women were seen as fallen sinners or simply working-class laborers. Officially, the church condemned their trade. Unofficially, it tolerated it, even taxed it, under the logic that better they sin than respectable wives be tempted. A moral loophole so large you could ride a horse through its hand. Many did. You step aside as another woman sweeps past, balancing a tray of wine jugs. Her gown's hem is wet from something you don't want to identify. She hums a love song that's slightly off-key, pausing only to cough. The melody drifts after her, blending into the tapestry of sounds that make up the house. Laughter, moaning, coughing, coins, and the ever-present creak of wood. The rooms themselves are studies in contrasts. Some are lined with faded curtains, others with nothing but bare plaster and graffiti scratched into the walls, names, prayers, sometimes insults. One reads, "May God forgive what hunger makes us do." Trace the letters lightly, the indent still sharp. Someone carved that deeply, as if trying to cut through time itself. A soft voice interrupts. Don T touched that. Bad luck. You turn to see a tall woman leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Her hair's braided tight, her gown patched but clean. She introduces herself as Margot. "Been here 5 years," she says, as though reciting a weather report. "That's long for this place." You ask if she likes the work. She laughs once, short and bitter. It's not work. It's waiting. Waiting for coin, for sleep, for your body to stop hurting, for someone to remember your real name. You don't ask what her real name is. She probably wouldn't tell you anyway. She gestures toward the younger women. "We teach the new ones how not to die too fast. Don't drink with clients. Hide a knife under the bed. Never open the door unless you know who's knocking." There's something like pride in her voice. You realize that within these walls, experience equals authority. Margot is both mentor and enforcer, big sister in a house where no one's family. "Does the madam protect you?" You ask. "Protect?" She smirks. She protects her investment. That's not the same thing. Still, you sense a strange respect in her tone when she mentions the mistress. She came from nothing, same as us. But she learned to own her debts instead of drown in them. That's a kind of magic. Margot returns to her work, brushing dust from the bedspread. You linger, caught between curiosity and discomfort. The room smells faintly of rose oil and smoke. "You from the city?" she asks suddenly. You nod. Then you don't know how lucky you are. You're about to answer when another woman bursts in, breathless. "The soldiers are back," she hisses. Margot's expression hardens. "Which ones?" "The drunk ones. The ones with the red scarves." Margot mutters something that sounds like a curse. "Stay upstairs till she calls," she says to the others. No one goes down until it's quiet. You peek through the crack in the door and see the madam below, already moving toward the commotion, calm and deadly. You realize again how precarious this world is. Every night, a coin toss between routine and ruin. The tension upstairs feels electric. Women exchange glances, hands hovering near hidden knives. A few whispered prayers under their breath, half to God, half to anyone who might listen. Historians still argue whether women in these brothels had access to weapons. Some records mention daggers confiscated during raids. Others claim they relied on charm alone. But the way Margot moves slow, deliberate, you're certain she keeps something sharp within reach. The noise downstairs builds, shouting, laughter, the crash of a chair. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. The women hold their breath. Finally, you hear the madam's voice, low, even, commanding. "Out," she says. A pause. Then boots thud against the floorboards as the soldiers stumble out into the street. The air upstairs loosens again. Margot exhales, mutters, "Every night's the same." She turns to you with a faint smile. "Still think you'd last here?" You try to joke, depends on the dental plan, but the humor lands hollow. She chuckles anyway. You'd be surprised. Some people last a week. Some don't last a night. And she opens the window, shudders slightly. Cold air spills in, carrying the smell of rain and sewage. The contrast is startling fresh, sharp, alive. We leave it open when we can, she says. Makes us remember there's still a world out there. You watch her for a moment, silhouetted against the lamplight. Down below, the red lantern swings in the wind, a beacon of sin and survival. Margot closes the shutter, returns to her seat, and begins mending a tear in her gown. The needle glints in the light, rising and falling in steady rhythm. You find it oddly hypnotic, the quiet industry of endurance. The noise downstairs resumes, softer now, subdued. The house exhales. You feel the night settling deeper into its bones, a mixture of routine and fatigue. You realize, with a slow ache of understanding, that these women aren't just surviving, they're curating their own fragments of dignity within the filth. And as the candle beside you sputters out, plunging the hall into deeper shadow, you understand something else. This isn't a place for weakness or sentiment. It's a place for women who have mastered the art of pretending strength until it becomes real. The smell of rose oil lingers. The floor creaks. The brothel breathes on. You sit at the top of the stairs for a while, listening to the slow rhythm of the house below. The worst of the commotion has faded, replaced by murmured voices, an occasional laugh, the shuffle of feet on uneven boards. You think of the coins passing between hands, how they sound almost gentle, like rain. But here, money isn't just currency. It's the pulse of the place. It's the thing that keeps the city's hypocrisy breathing smoothly. Because what you're really sitting in isn't just a house of pleasure. It's an economic machine. You descend the steps again, and the madam is already at her ledger, tallying up the night's take. Quills scratch against parchment. Coins clink into neat piles. You notice she doesn't separate the coins by type, only by what a practical choice in a world where counterfeit silver and shaved pennies are everywhere. You approach slowly, careful not to interrupt. You ever wonder, she says without looking up, why they call us sinners and still take our taxes? You shrugged. Seems efficient. She finally looks up, and there's something like amusement in her eyes. Efficient, she repeats, as if tasting the word. That's one way to bless a crooked system. In medieval Europe, brothels weren't just tolerated, they were regulated. Cities realized long ago that outlawing lust didn't erase it. It just made it more expensive to police. So, officials built municipal brothels where workers were licensed, clients were documented, and a share of every transaction went straight to the city's purse. One surviving record from 14th century. Toulouse even lists exact taxes. A portion for maintenance, a portion for protection, and another for moral oversight. A phrase so ironic you almost choke on it. You glance around and imagine a medieval accountant somewhere, quill in hand, calculating sign by the ounce. How many souls for a new city wall, do you think? You murmur, the madam smirks. Depends on the wall and the souls. Nearby, the barmaid slides a jug toward a customer. Church gets its share too, she says under her breath. We pay penance before we even sin. That's not an exaggeration. Many towns required brothels to pay church fees, disguised as charitable donations. Priests would preach against immorality on Sunday morning, then collect contributions from it on Monday afternoon. Historians still argue whether that was cynical pragmatism or a desperate attempt to control vice. Probably both. You watch a group of merchants counting coins at a table. Their hands are ink-stained, their nails trimmed short men who handle money, not swords. They talk in hushed tones about tariffs and shipments, using the brothel as a kind of shadow office, cheaper than renting a hall. One jokes. You realize this place is less about desire and more about business. deals made here ripple through markets far beyond these walls. Even the furniture tells a story. The benches are built from old shipping crates, repurposed from wine or spice imports. The walls bear faint chalk marks, probably credit tallies for regular clients. Everyone owes someone here. Even pleasure runs on credit. The madam closes her ledger and sets it aside. They think this is sin, she says quietly, but it's really survival. For all of us. You can't tell if she's talking about her workers or herself. Maybe both. Behind her, a small wooden chest sits half hidden under a cloth. You glimpse its contents when she opens it briefly. Coins, but also folded parchment, ribbons, and a rosary missing half its beads. Keepsakes, maybe. Collateral, secrets. A drunk at the far end of the room slams his cup down. Another, he demands. The barmaid hesitates his tabs, already longed. The madam doesn't move to stop her though. Sometimes, letting the customer think he's winning is the better economy. You sit back and watch the strange ecosystem play out. The brothel mirrors the larger world outside. Hierarchies, debts, alliances. It's capitalism wrapped in lace and candle smoke. The women sell illusions, but what they really trade is time-borrowed hours of safety, warmth, or attention. Time that can't ever be refunded. A man in priestess robes enters quietly through the back door, hood drawn low. No one reacts. He walks straight to a side table, sets down a small pouch, and speaks softly to the madam. You catch only a few words. Inspection, cleanliness, agreement. She nods, slips him a folded paper, and he leaves as silently as he came. You raise an eyebrow. Was that an official visit? She says coolly. Every Thursday. They make sure we're still sinful in an orderly fashion. You laugh under your breath. Sounds like quality control. Exactly, she says. Everyone loves control, even over chaos. It's a dark kind of comedy, this bureaucratic management of vice. Some cities even required brothels to close on holy days, though everyone knew that was when the real business boomed. Others demanded the women wear specific clothing. Yellow veils in Florence, striped gowns in London, blue scarves in Bruges. A uniform of shame meant to mark them as outcasts, even beyond the brothel walls. You imagine stepping outside, wearing that yellow veil, every stare branding you twice over. No wonder so many workers rarely left their houses except at night. Historians still argue whether these dress codes protected women from worse persecution or merely deepened it. Either way, they turned anonymity into a privileged one few here could afford. The madam catches you watching her again. Thinking too much, she says. That's bad for business. It's occupational hazard. You reply. She tilts her head. What's your occupation then? Tonight, survivor. It's for the first time she actually laughs a quick, sharp sound. Then you'll learn fast. A new group enters. Sailors, by the look of them. Their boots leaving muddy prints and their laughter filling the room like thunder. Instantly, the women straighten their gowns, adjust ribbons, fix smiles. You can almost feel the collective inhale the start of another negotiation. Another transaction, dressed as affection. Coins spill onto the counter. One sailor jokes, worth every penny. The madam's smile doesn't reach her eyes. She pockets the money with practiced ease. Every penny, yes, she murmurs, and every piece of your soul. You don't even notice missing. It's not meant for you, but the words stay. You realize that here, morality isn't about right or wrong. It's about who gets paid to define it. Hey, stray thought drifts through your mind. How many cathedrals, universities, and guild halls were built with taxes collected from houses like this? How many sermons rang out from pulpits funded by charitable donations of sin? The irony burns slow, like candle wax dripping on skin. The fiddler starts a jaunty tune again, trying to lighten the mood. The sailors sing along, clapping out of rhythm. Someone spills ale. Someone laughs too hard. The night resets, as if none of it matters. You lean back and let the scene blur the smell of smoke. The glow of candles, the flicker of shadowed faces. The economy of desire hums on, as relentless as any marketplace, and yet, underneath it all, you feel a current of defiance. These women may be trapped by coin, but they also bend it to survive. They've turned the city's moral contradictions into their shield. The madam glances at the lantern, hanging above the door, still burning red, steady and unblinking. She whispers something to herself, maybe a prayer or a curse, before turning back to her ledger. The ink shines black in the candlelight, and for a fleeting second, you realize that history doesn't remember her as a saint or a sinner, as a line item in someone else's account book, and that's when it hits you. Morality here isn't preached, it's priced. You're led up the stairs again, but this time you're not just an observer. The madam waves over a narrow-shouldered girl with a pale braid and tells her to show our guests to the room upstairs. You half expect a velvet-curtained boudoir maybe, something from a Renaissance painting, but as soon as she opens the door, your fantasy collapses like a damp tapestry. The air hits you first. It smells of tallow candles, unwashed linen, and something faintly metallic, cold blood or rust. You can't tell. The girl gestures inside with a practiced smile. It's clean, she says, and you realize that clean in the Middle Ages means something very different from what you're used to. You step in carefully. The floorboards groan beneath your weight. The straw mattress in the corner looks like it's already seen too many occupants. The straw is darkened, flattened, and moving slightly. No, that's not your imagination. Fleas, maybe lice, possibly worse. The girl shrugs. They bite less when it's cold. You laugh nervously, but she's serious. She goes to the small window and lifts a warped wooden shutter, letting in a narrow slice of moonlight. The air outside is damp and heavy with the smell of the alley urine, horse manure, cheap ale, and despair, all mixing in the night breeze. You notice a chipped pitcher of water by the bed. It's brownish. For washing. You ask. She nods. Rainwater. We boiled it last week. Week. You look around for a basin, a towel, maybe a hint of soap. But the closest thing is a rag that could double as a relic from a battlefield. Suddenly, your 21st century immune system starts whispering panic into your ears. You sit gingerly on the edge of the bed. The straw crunches. The girl sits opposite you on a stool. She looks young to young, but her eyes are older than anyone's you've met tonight. She starts to hum softly, some folk tune that sounds both sweet and unbearably sad. Is it always this quiet? You ask. She smiles faintly. Only until the rats start. Right on cue, you hear a faint scuttling under the floorboards. You flinch, and she giggles, amused at your discomfort. They don't bite much, she says. They have plenty to eat downstairs. Realize this isn't mockery. It's comforter version of it. You look around the room again, trying to find something redeeming. There's a cracked mirror on the wall, tilted awkwardly. In it, the candlelight flickers across your face, casting shadows that make you look half-haunted. You can almost imagine what the room would have looked like centuries ago, barely different. Maybe a tapestry here, a rosary there, but still the same smell of candle smoke embodies. It's humbling in a grim sort of way. The idea that human desire has always played out in rooms like this, small, shabby, fleeting. The girl notices your expression. You're not from here, she says. It's not a question. No, you admit, just visiting. Then you'll leave tomorrow, she says, and forget this place. You don't have the heart to tell her that you won't, that this image, this smell, this flicker of shared humanity will stay lodged in your mind like a splinter. She stands, smoothing her skirt. If you need warmth, she says, there's an extra blanket. It's not really a blanket. It's a piece of rough wool, stiff with age and smoke, but it's a gesture. You accept it. For a moment, you both sit in silence. The candle flickers low. You hear the sounds of the brothel below. Muffled laughter, a chair scraping, someone coughing hard. The medieval night hums with life. even up here. You can't help but wonder how anyone found this erotic. Maybe it wasn't about that. Maybe it was about escaping something: loneliness, war, hunger, grief. Maybe that's what every customer truly paid for. The illusion of being safe for an hour. Do you ever get used to it? You ask. The girl looks at you strangely. To what? To the noise, the smell, You trail off. She shrugs. You get used to breathing what's around you, don't you? That hits deeper than you expect. Because, yes, you do. People always adapt, even to misery. Especially to misery. She turns toward a small wooden chest by the wall and opens it. Inside are a few trinkets: a comb missing several teeth, a piece of ribbon, a small figurine carved from bone. She picks it up, rubs it between her fingers. A pilgrim gave me this, she says. Said it would keep me from sin. Has it worked? You ask. She smiles faintly. Depends what you call sin. Historians still argue whether medieval brothels were truly dens of depravity or necessary safety valves for a repressed society. Some claim they prevented worse crimes by offering regulated vice. Others insist they deepened inequality and disease. The truth probably lies. As always, somewhere between those flea-bitten sheets, you lie back on the straw, pulling the rough wool over your chest. The ceiling is low and cracked, cobwebs trembling in the candlelight. You think of all the people who must have stared at that same ceiling over the centuries: merchants, soldiers, priests, dreamers, each convinced they were having a private experience, when really it was just another echo in the endless repetition of human need. A breeze rattles the window. You shiver. Doesn't the cold bother you? You ask. The girl shakes her head. The cold is honest, she says. It never pretends to be kind. You watch her as she tidies the corner of the room. She moves with quiet efficiency, her gesture small but certain. This is her domain, humble, fragile, but hers. You suddenly realize how much power she must hold over her own endurance. You, with your modern comfort and immunity shots, wouldn't last the night. She's lasted years. She glances over her shoulder. You should sleep. The guards make rounds soon. Guards. She nods. They collect their share too. Of course they do. Everyone does. You can almost hear the invisible economy ticking through the wall squines passing hands. Favors traded. Bribes paid. Even rest costs something. You lie still, trying to ignore the itch on your leg. Fleas. Definitely fleas. You brush them away with a blanket, which only stirs the straw and releases a puff of dust. Don't fight them, the girl advises softly. They always win. You laugh weakly. That's comforting. She blows out the candle, plunging the room into shadow. Moonlight creeps in through the crack in the shutter. You hear her footsteps fading down the hall, then the door closing softly behind her. The darkness settles thick and absolute. Somewhere beneath you, a lute begins to play a slow, melancholy tune that seeps up through the floorboards. You close your eyes, trying to picture the world beyond this narrow room. Cathedrals lit by stained glass, merchants in crowded markets, nobles in silken beds. You think about how fragile the line is between those lives and this one. Just one twist of fate, a lost coin purse, a bad harvest, a betrayal, and anyone could end up here, counting breaths instead of blessings. The straw crackles as you shift, and the air fills with that ancient, sour smell again. The sound of footsteps in the hall grows louder, then fades. Somewhere, someone laughs, then coughs. The music stops abruptly, replaced by silence so deep you can hear your own pulse. And lying there, staring at the ceiling, you realize that luxury is a very recent invention and that the past doesn't smell like nostalgia. It smells like this: smoke, sweat, and survival. You wake before dawn, groggy, itchy, and questioning every romantic notion you've ever had about old world charm. The room's air feels heavier than sleep itself, thick, with the residue of 1,000 forgotten nights. You sit up, scratching at your wrist. Spot a small bowl of something on the rickety table, grayish paste with petals floating in it. It looks like porridge, but smells like vinegar and wilted roses. The girl from last night reappears, yawning, her hair wrapped in a scarf. It's for the skin, she explains, noticing your hesitation. Stops the itching. Sometimes, okay? You lean in cautiously. What's in it? Goat fat, crushed violets. And, she lowers her voice, a little lie. Ah, medieval skincare. One step away from alchemy. One step closer to chemical warfare. She dips 2 fingers into the paste and smears a dab on her cheek. Makes you glow, she says, deadpan. And indeed, her skin does glow, though that could be the faint sheen of irritation. You decide to try a little on your wrist. It stings like betrayal. She laughs. You city folk are too soft. Downstairs, the house begins to stir. A kettle whistles weakly over the hearth. Someone coughs phlegm into a bucket, and a lute plucks half-heartedly through the fog of sleep. Morning in a medieval brothel is not glamorous its logistics. As the women prepare for another day, the rituals begin, rinsing faces in cold rainwater, brushing hair with combs missing half their teeth, and dabbing perfume made from rosemary steeped in wine. The air fills with competing scent herbs, smoke, sweat, something faintly metallic that might be blood or iron polish. You sit near the window, watching them work. Their motions are mechanical but purposeful, practiced like soldiers before a parade. Beauty here isn't luxury, it's armor. One of the older women, her hair streaked with gray, sits beside you, mixing something in a small bowl. For the eyes, she says, showing you a black paste. Makes them shine in candlelight. You lean closer. What's in it? Burnt almonds, soot, and goose fat. She grins, toothless, but proud. Better than your modern paint, I bet. You decide not to mention mascara. Another woman joins in, holding up a pot of rouge made from red ochre and wine dregs. Some girls use pig's blood, she says casually, but it crusts if you laugh too much. You snort. Occupational hazard. She winks. Better crusted than pale. There's laughter, dry, low, but genuine. You realize humor might be the most valuable cosmetic they own. And then come the truly strange remedies. One woman produces a small pouch of dark powder and whispers that it's made from dried crocodile dung. Stops sunburn, she assures you. You blink. There are crocodiles in England. She shrugs. Traders bring it from Egypt. Holy land. Holy beasts. Can't tell if she's joking, but either way, it explains why medieval complexions weren't exactly radiant. Historians still argue whether these beauty recipes were genuine self-care or simply performance tools to sell a lure to paying guys. Some scholars even suggest that the ritual of getting ready together fostered community, a quiet defiance against a world that only valued them for appearance. Looking around now, you believe that? Beneath the laughter and absurdity, there's tenderness. Here a shared ritual of survival disguised as vanity. You wander toward a cracked mirror where one of the younger girls is tying ribbons into her hair. Pretty, isn't it? She says, noticing your reflection beside hers. It is, you admit. But doesn't it take forever? She smiles faintly. Time passes anyway. Might as well pass beautifully. Outside, church bells ring the morning prayer. The irony is impossible to ignore. While the pious kneeled for salvation, these women prepare for commerce. Both acts are rituals. Both rely on faith, one in God, the other in men's wallets. The madam enters, surveying the room like a general before battle. Quickly now, she calls. The merchant caravans arrive today. Clean sheets on the front rooms, at least clean enough to fool them. She stops by your chair. You look rested, she says with a grin that implies she knows you're not rested enough. You reply, good. You'll need strength for breakfast. Breakfast turns out to be hard bread dipped in weak eel, apparently safer than the water. You chew slowly, imagining the microbes waging war in your stomach. Across the table, the women gossip about remedies, debating which herb best hides the blush of fever. One swears by rosemary, another by sage soaked in vinegar. The older woman shakes her head. Nothing hides a broken heart, she says, but a bit of lead powder will hide everything else. You nearly choke. Lead. She nods proudly, makes the skin white like a noble woman's. You glance at her grayish complexion and decide not to argue. The pursuit of beauty, it seems, has always been a little self-destructive. Still, there's artistry in their efforts. One woman mixes dried lavender with oil, applying it behind her ears. Another burns rosemary to cleanse the air, though it mostly adds a smoky tang. You notice how they share tools, swap ingredients, and borrow mirrors. It's a communal ritual, not unlike soldiers polishing armor together. The goal isn't perfection, it's readiness. You think of the modern world's endless shelves of serums and toners. Suddenly, goat fat doesn't seem so strange. At least, it's honest as the morning wears on. The first customers trickle in, merchants from the docks, already half drunk, looking for warmth before the day's trade begins. The madam positions the girls strategically, matching smiles to coin purses. Everything is calculation disguised as charm. A girl named Elise leans toward you, whispering, "Don't stare too long. They'll think you're competition." You smile. "I promise, I'm strictly amateur." She giggles, covering her mouth. "If you say so." From the corner, the barmaid splashes water into cups, muttering about blessed vinegar as she sprinkles herbs in. "Keep sickness away," she insists. "Does it work?" You ask. She shrugs. "Depends who you ask. The priests say disease is God's punishment. The healers say it's bad air. I say it's the rats. Historians still argue. You mumble, and they probably will forever." Elise hears and laughs. "Historians can argue all they like," she says. "We just live it." That line stays with you. You look at her hands, rough, cracked, stained with rouge. These are not the hands of temptation. They're the hands of labor. Every layer of powder, every drop of scent is work. The madam rings a small bell. "Places," she calls. The women disperse to their corners, her faces transformed by candlelight and courage. You remain by the window, staring out at the muddy street. The city beyond is waking vendors, shouting, carts creaking, smoke rising from 100 chimneys. Somewhere out there, scholars write treatises about morality, while their brothers slip into this house through the back door. The girl with the pale braid passes by, can hand you a sprig of rosemary. "For your pocket," she says. "Keeps away bad air." You tuck it into your coat, grateful for the small act of kindness. The scent is sharp and clean, a reminder that even here, amid grime and deception, people still reach for something pure. The madam extinguishes a candle by the ledger and mutters, "Another day, another confession waiting to happen." Okay, and you realize this house isn't just selling bodies or fantasies. It's selling forgetfulness, bottled for a price, fumed with rosemary and goat fat. You scratch your wrist again and feel the sting of the paste still burning faintly. Maybe beauty is supposed to hurt, or maybe pain is the only thing that keeps it believable. Either way, you wouldn't last another day here. Evening creeps back over the city like a slow bruise, violet and smoky. You're still in the house, somehow still alive, but your nerves hum like harpstrings pulled too tight. The madam orders lanterns lit and tables cleared. The women change gowns, dab more wine-scented perfume, and straighten their posture as if preparing for inspection. The night shift, she calls it the real work. Downstairs, the first notes of a fiddle quiver through the air. The same fiddler from before, his beard damp with ale, tunes his strings with exaggerated solemnity. "Play soft till the money starts flowing," the madam warns him. "Then make it merry." Within minutes, The room fills with the sound of boots. The clientele tonight is mixed. Sailors, traders, few men in chainmail who might be knights or might just have stolen armor. A heavy man with a scarred cheek tosses coins onto the counter and shouts for wine. The barmaid rolls her eyes but pours anyway. Business is business. You stand near a support beam, serving the human tide swirled through candlelight and smoke. The laughter is loud, but you can feel the danger underneath, the quicksand quality of revelry that could sink at any wrong word. A girl brushes past you, her perfume strong enough to make your eyes water. Smile, she whispers. They can smell fear. You try, but the muscles in your face don't quite cooperate. The musicians pick up speed, the tune growing body. Someone starts clapping. Someone else slams his cup against the table in rhythm. The whole room pulses with noise and heat. The madam watches from the doorway, her arms crossed half mother. Half General Dot. You think briefly of modern bars, of bouncers and cover charges. Here, entry is free, but exit might cost your dignity, or your purse, or worse, drink. Someone calls, handing you a wooden cup. You hesitate. It smells like vinegar, mixed with honey. Mead, he says proudly. Imported. You sip cautiously. It tastes like someone's sweetened regret. Still, the warmth spreads quickly. The music gets louder. The room tilts toward chaos. A nightor, at least a man dressed like one, leans across the table, boasting about a campaign in France. Killed 3 men before breakfast, he declares. The woman beside him feigns admiration, though her eyes are elsewhere, tracking the barmaid's movements. She's calculating whether his coin purse or his temper will last longer. You catch snippets of conversation everywhere. Merchants gossiping about guild taxes, a drunk mumbling about the Pope, 2 thieves whispering about a guard shift. It dawns on you that the brothel isn't just an escape, it's an information hub. Half the city's secrets probably pass through here before sunrise. The fiddler switches to a faster tune, okay, and one of the sailors leaps up, clapping and spinning a girl by the arm. The crowd cheers. She laughs, but her eyes dart toward the madam, checking if she's allowed this freedom. The madam gives a small nod permission, granted, but only for tonight. You notice how the women move through the crowd with astonishing precision, weaving between drunks and egos, navigating hands and glances like dancers avoiding blades. Each smile is measured, each laugh rationed. Pleasure here is choreography at your table. A young clerk stares into his cup, muttering prayers between sips. The Lord forgives all, he says to no one in particular. Then, quieter, I hope, you murmur, you and half this room. He looks up, startled, as if remembering you're real. Do you think he listens? You shrug. Historians still argue whether he's paying attention. He snorts a laugh, and for a moment, you both just drink in peace. A crash interrupts the illusion to sailors fighting over a dice game. The table tips, coins scatter. Someone curses loudly. The madam's voice cuts through the room. Enough. She doesn't shout. She doesn't need to. The tone alone could stop a siege. The men freeze. One grumbles but retreats, nursing his pride. The madam nods once, satisfied. You break it. You pay for it, she warns. The crowd exhales collectively, tension dissolving back into noise. The fiddler resumes, playing as though nothing happened. You realize how close that came to bloodshed. The air here is soaked in ale, and Riskini spark could turn it violent at the edge of the room. A priest in a travel cloak drinks quietly, pretending not to be recognized. You notice the glint of his ring, the faint trace of incense clinging to his sleeves. The woman beside him whispers something that makes him blush crimson. You look away politely, though you can't help thinking that this place could blackmail half the clergy if it ever wanted to. The madam joins you, watching the room with cool detachment. See them? She says, gesturing with her chin toward a group of wealthy-looking men near the back. They'll spend a month's wages tonight. and confess tomorrow. That's the rhythm of the world. You nod, and you keep time for them. She smiles thinly. Someone has to. A sudden gust pushes through the open window, fluttering the candle flames. The light dances across the room, catching on polished cups, gold buttons, eyes rimmed with coal. Everything looks alive, too alive. The lute player switches to a love song, and the energy shifts. The laughter softens, replaced by murmured words, slow gestures, lingering touches. You can almost feel the collective exhale, as if everyone's pretending just for a heartbeat that this is tenderness, not transaction. You glance toward the door and see a group of guards loitering outside, silhouettes against the lamplight. Protection, technically, though everyone knows they take a nightly fee to look the other way. Inside, crowd sways like a single organism, half drunk, half desperate. You're caught in the current, with the rhythm pulling you along. A man with a lute approaches the hearth, his fingers plucking a haunting melody now. Quieter, slower. The whole room hushes. Even the drunkest patrons pause. The song is about a sailor who never returned, a woman who waited by the shore, a love promised and forgotten. It's cliché, even by medieval standards. Something in it cuts through the noise. You feel it too, the loneliness hidden under all this performance, the ache of people trying to feel human, if only for one night. When the song ends, the silence lingers longer than expected. Then someone cheers, and the noise crashes back like a wave. You glance at the girl with the pale braid. She's laughing again, flirting with a merchant who looks like he hasn't smiled in months. She catches your eye for a split second, and in that look, you see what she's really selling. Not lust, not pleasure, a reprieve. You sip the last of your mead and taste Ashtat. The madam leans close. If you want to see how fragile peace is, stay till closing. You nod slowly. Around you, the party rages, on cups clattering, music thumping, perfume burning in the air like incense for false gods. And yet, beneath the revelry, you sense something fraying. Too much wine, too many tempers. You wonder who will be the first to break the illusion. Outside, thunder murmurs in the distance, echoing down the alleys. The madam glances toward the door. Storm's coming, she mutters. Always does when the men drink too fast. You look around and think she might not be talking about the weather. The storm breaks just as the music stops. A crack of thunder rolls over the city, shaking dust loose from the rafters. The candles gutter in their sconces, and for a heartbeat, the whole brothel seems to hold its breath. You can smell the rain before you hear its sweat, stone, smoke, and sewage blending into something oddly cleansing. The crowd murmurs, uneasy. Then the door bursts open. Two men in dull brown cloaks step inside, followed by a third wearing a metal badge and an expression like he smelled something sour. The music dies entirely. Even the drunkest sailor straightens up. Evening, good folk, the badge wearer says, his tone oily. City inspection. The madam steps forward, her voice smooth as honey, but her eyes sharp as nails. So soon, we had our turn last week. He smirks. New schedule. The council's very concerned about moral hygiene, okay? You can hear the capitalization in his voice. He enjoys the performance of righteousness. Behind him, one of his assistants takes out a small notebook and a stub of charcoal, ready to record infractions. The madam folds her arms. And what exactly are you inspecting tonight? Cleanliness, order, payment of dues, decency. He lets the last word hang like smoke. You know how it is. You're not sure whether he's threatening her or flirting. Possibly both. He turns to scan the room, his gaze snagging on the patrons. Gentlemen, your names? Murmurs ripple through the crowd. No one volunteers. The badge wearer sighs, pretending disappointment. Ah, I see. A house of silence as well as sin. Okay, the madam cuts in before he can push further. They're guests, not criminals. Key grins. That depends on how much they've had to drink. I notice his eyes flicking toward the coin box on the counter. That's what this is about. Not morals dash money. One of the guards moves toward the ledger. K, but the madam slides in front of him, blocking the way with a politeness that feels like a blade. You'll find everything in order, she says. The inspector leans in close. Order can always be improved for a fee. A low murmur moves through the women. They've seen this before. The madam doesn't flinch. She reaches into her sleeve, produces a small purse, and tosses it to him with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. For the city's moral hygiene, she says. The inspector catches it midair, weighs it in his hand, and nods. Ah, much improved already. He pockets the purse and turns to go, but his assistant hesitates. Sir, shouldn't we? Already done, the inspector interrupts. I've seen all I need. The man turned toward the door, satisfied parasites. But then one of them stops. He's staring at the girl with the pale braid. You, he says, pointing. Come here. She stiffens. The madam's voice drops into something colder. She's working, and she won't mind a few questions. The man replies, smiling thinly. He steps closer, but the madam moves first, placing herself squarely between them. The air crackles tense, silent, dangerous. Finally, the inspector clears his throat. Let it be, Ulrich, he mutters. We've already collected our tithe. The man glares, but backs off, muttering something obscene under his breath. As they leave, one of the sailors spits on the floor. City rats, he says. Always hungriest when the cellars are empty. The door closes behind them. The thunder outside muffles the collective exhale that follows. The madam rubs her temples. They'll be back, she says. They always come back. You glance around the room. Everyone looks shaken, not terrified, but resigned. This isn't a rare intrusion. It's a rhythm, as regular as the bells. Historians still argue whether these inspections were official regulation or legalized extortion. In theory, the authorities claimed to protect public health. In practice, they protected their own pockets. Brothels, paid taxes, morality fees, and bribes, sometimes all to the same official. It was a delicate ecosystem of sign and order, maintained by hypocrisy and coin. The madam catches your eye. You're thinking too loud again, trying to understand how this keeps going. She pours herself a small cup of wine, same as everything else, because it pays someone to let it. Downstairs, the fiddler tunes his instrument again, half-heartedly. The mood has changed. The laughter from earlier feels brittle now. Even the candles seem to burn lower, their flames trembling with each draft. The girl with the braid sits near the hearth, staring at the floor. You sit beside her, offering what little comfort silence can give. They always look at me, she says quietly, like I'm proof of something. Of what? You ask. That they're better, she says, and that they can afford not to be. You don't know how to answer that. A sudden flash of lightning illuminates the room. It's followed by thunder that rattles the windows. The flickering light makes every face momentarily ancient. Like a painting come alive, grim, luminous, fragile. The madam starts counting coins again, her hands steady. We'll need to pay them double next time, she mutters. Storm season makes men bold. Someone laughs bitterly. Maybe we should just move the whole house inside the cathedral. Wouldn't help, the barmaid says. The bishop would just raise the rent. You smirk, but the humor feels heavy. The more you see, the more it's clear that this house isn't an exception, it's the city in miniature. Power flows in one direction, and everyone below learns to swim in it or drown. A door slams upstairs. For a second, you think the inspectors have returned, but it's just the wind. The girl beside you flinches anyway. You should leave, she says softly, before they come back for real. You almost laugh. You think I'd make it far in this storm? She meets your eyes. Storms end. They don't forget you, but they end. Outside, the rain intensifies, drumming against the shutters. Water seeps under the door in thin rivulets. Someone sets out a bucket to catch the leaks. Life resumes its rhythm, because what else can it do? The madam moves through the room, reassuring the girls, adjusting candles, pretending all is normal. You admire her calm. It's the kind forged by necessity. When she passes you, she says quietly, "You see now why this house survives." You nod, because it's part of the system. "Exactly," she says. "Everyone needs us, just no one admits it." And the thunder rolls again, softer now. The candles recover their glow. Gradually, laughter returns, nervous at first, then louder. A sailor starts singing badly. The fiddler joins in. Life insists on itself, even here. You sit back, feeling the weight of the night pressing against the thin walls. The smell of wet wood and smoke fills your lungs. The city outside is still alive, still watching, and you realize that in this age, the law doesn't come to protect it, comes to collect. By dawn's first hour, the storm has slowed to a thin, steady drizzle. You might think that would bring calm, but instead, the house feels more anxious. The madam's on edge, pacing the lower hall, muttering about the smell of damp cloth and rotting air. You don't notice it at first, but then it hits you a faint, sour scent beneath the smoke and perfume. Not wine, not mildew, something sicker. Someone coughs upstairs, a wet, rattling cough. The barmaid winces. "That's the second this week," she whispers. You follow her gaze toward the narrow stairway. The cough stops, replaced by silence. You don't ask whose room it came from. You already know the answer won't be good. By the mid-1300s, this plague had turned Europe's alleys into graves. But the brothels kept their doors open because hunger never quarantines. You've stepped straight into that reality now, where disease lingers like perfume, clinging to curtains, shared cups, and skin. Someone opens a window for air. In the morning light filters through like weak tea. Dust motes swirl in it, beautiful, until you remember that medieval dust carried death. The madam claps her hands sharply. Out with the bed sheets. Wash them in vinegar. Boil the combs. A younger girl asks, "Will that keep it away?" The madam hesitates before answering. It helps. You can tell she doesn't believe it. Historians still argue whether vinegar, smoke, or crushed herbs did anything to stop plague transmission or weather. They simply made people feel like they had control. Control, in a place like this, is as rare as clean water. The workers start moving, gathering laundry in buckets. The air thickens with the acrid temps of vinegar and smoke from dried rosemary. Someone drops a pail, and the splash echoes like thunder. You help wring out the sheets, your hands stinging from the acid. "Does this happen often?" You ask. The barmaid shrugs. "Every season or two. Fever, rash, swelling, then quiet. Quiet." She nods grimly. Dead quiet. Outside, a bell tolls faintly from the parish church. It rings every time a new cart rolls past, carrying corpses to the pit. You try not to imagine how many times that bell has rung this week. One of the girls, her name might be. Magda clutches her stomach and bends over, shivering. The madam rushes to her side, whispering a prayer under her breath. You catch only fragments. Saint Roch, Saint Sebastian, Mercy. Magda shakes her head and says she's fine, just cold. The madam doesn't argue, but you see the worry settle behind her eyes like fog. The room smells now of sweat, vinegar, and fear. You step outside for air, ducking under the dripping eaves. The street glistens with rain, and the runoff from the upper alleys carries strange things past your boots' bits of cloth. Wilted flowers, something that looks disturbingly like a finger bone. You tell yourself it's not. A gravedigger trudges by with his cart, humming to himself. You catch the tune something like a lullaby. He nods politely. "Keep your door shut," he warns. "They're saying it's worse down by the fish market." You nod back. "Thanks for the cheer." He grins, revealing the missing teeth. Better me warn you than the priest. He just tells you to confess. You've almost laughed, then don't. When you return inside, the atmosphere's heavier. The madam has lit a bowl of incense on the hearth amber sage, and something bitter enough to sting your nose. Keeps the air clean, she mutters. You resist pointing out that the air isn't the problem. Instead, you watch as she ties a charm to the lentella pouch of herbs wrapped in red string. Witchcraft, you ask lightly. Insurance, she replies. The church can't afford to bless us, so we bless ourselves. You think of all the contradictions packed into this single house: sin and survival, faith and defiance, life and death brushing shoulders like old friends. A knock comes at the door, soft but insistent. The madam frowns. We're closed till evening. The knock repeats. She sighs, signals the doorman. When he opens it, a man stands there wearing a long, waxed cloak and a bird-beaked mask, one of the city's plague doctors. You've seen pictures of them in books, terrifying and absurd. Those hooked masks stuffed with herbs. But up close, it's worse. The beak gleams with damp, the eyes hidden behind dark glass. He looks like a nightmare tax collector. Which of you is mistress here? His voice comes muffled. The madam steps forward. I am. I've orders from the city, he says. Reports of sickness. Her chin lifts. We handle our own. He tilts his head slightly. That may be. But if you want your house to stay open, I'll need to see you're sick. You can feel the room tighten. No one breathes. Finally, she nods toward the stairs. Up there, second door. He ascends slowly, the long leather coat whispering with each step. No one follows him. The silence stretches until it feels unbearable. Then he returns, wiping his gloves with the cloth. She's alive, he says simply. For now, the madam exhales shakily. And if she dies, then you close for a week. Burn the bedding. Say your prayers. She frowns. And if we don't, he looks at her through those black lenses. Then the city will. He turns and leaves, the door banging behind him. The room exhales again, this time in something like despair. The madam sinks into a chair. A week, she murmurs. We can't afford a day. You want to offer comfort, but what can you say? Even the most righteous city folk are terrified of contagion. A brothel is the perfect scapegoat. If the plague worsens, they'll burn this place before they bless it. The barmaid pours herself a cup of something strong and passes it to you. Drink, she says. If the sickness comes, at least you won't care. You take a sip. It's foul, but it burns pleasantly. A faint laugh rises from upstairs, a woman's voice, cracked but defiant. Somehow, despite everything, someone still has the nerve to laugh. You find that strangely comforting. The madam notices your look. Don't be fooled, she says softly. People don't laugh because they're happy. They laugh so the fear can't hear them. Sighed, the rain has stopped. The air feels cleaner, though you know it's an illusion. Death doesn't need thunder to arrive. It just waits for silence. And as the church bell tolls again 3 long, slow notes, you wonder how many more nights this house can survive before the sickness claims it too. By the next evening, the house smells less like vinegar and more like resolve. The madam has decided to stay open because what else can they do? The city's rules say close, but hunger says work. You've noticed by now that hunger always wins. You wake to the clatter of keys and whispers. The women are preparing as usual, though the atmosphere feels hushed, watchful. Even laughter happens in half volume, as if the air itself might overhear. Downstairs, the candles burn lower than before, conserving wax. The madam sits behind her desk, ledger open, counting coins with precise flicks of her fingers. She looks up at you. You still here? You shrug. Curiosity's a stubborn disease. She smirks. So's survival. The morning has brought a sort of brittle calm. You start to notice little things you missed before the strategies, the small acts of self-preservation hidden beneath the routine. For example, the candle trick. One of the girls, a clever brunette named Isoda, shows you how they hide coins inside the wax. We melt the slit in the side. She explains, her tone conspiratorial. Slide in a few silvers, let it harden again. Nobody searches candles. You watch as she demonstrates. The melted wax glows amber against her fingertips. Clever, you say. She winks. Clever keeps you fed. Another woman, older and quieter, spends her afternoon cutting a slice into the lining of her bodice. Inside, it goes a folded scrap of parchment names, payments, maybe threats, insurance, she says simply. Men forget promises. Paper doesn't. You begin to see the brothel as less of a den and more of a fortress built not with walls, but with wits. The barmaid joins you, carrying a tray of wine cups. You think this place runs on luck? She asks, overhearing your thoughts. No, it runs on secrets. You look at her. Whose secrets? Everyone's, she says. That's why we're still alive. A scholar today might call it social intelligence. Back then, it was just staying one step ahead of ruin. As the afternoon fades, the women gather near the hearth. The light flickers over their faces, revealing exhaustion beneath the rouge. One of them begins to talk about omens. There was smoke in the candle this morning, she says. Straight up. Then it bent. Means visitors. Or drafts, Isolde says dryly. The first girl ignores her. When the smoke bends twice, it means danger. I saw that once, before the fire in Bishop's Lane. You glance at the candle beside Hertz. Smoke does bend, oddly. Whether it's superstition or intuition, you can't tell. Historians still argue whether medieval people believed in omens because they were ignorant or because it was the only way to make sense of chaos. The madam approaches. Overhearing, omens are not, she says. Keep the doors open. Fear's bad for business. Even so, she ties a small silver charm to the door handle before leaving, just in case. As night deepens, the house fills against fewer customers than usual, but enough to keep the rooms busy. You notice how smoothly the routine runs now. The practiced smiles, the efficient cleaning, the coded glances that say trouble here or move there. One of the younger women, Alma, takes you aside. Want to see something? You nod. She leads you through a narrow corridor behind the pantry, where the scent of onions hides a faint sweetness soap. Maybe. She lifts a loose floorboard, revealing a small hollow. Inside, 2 letters, 3 coins, and a carved wooden pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. That's your secret stash? You ask. She shakes her head. It's hers. She nods toward the upstairs rooms. The one who left last winter. What happened to her? Alma looks away. She bought her freedom. Or tried to. Did it work? No one ever came back to tell us. She closes the floorboard carefully, pats it once, and smiles faintly. Still, it's good luck to keep something hidden. Makes you feel like you own at least one thing that's yours. You think about that. Ownership, here, is almost a myth. Even their names shift with the client's Isolde tonight. Isabel tomorrow. Upstairs, laughter drifts through the cracks in the floorboards. For a moment, it sounds real. Maybe it is. Maybe the act of pretending creates truth, however briefly. Later, after the customers have gone, the women gather again in the kitchen. Someone passes around a flask. The topic tonight is fortune-telling, bones, or cards. The barmaid asks. Smoke, says the superstitious one. Candle smoke tells truer things. She tilts her candle and watches the thin line twist and curl. Straight means safety. Left means love. Right means money. And down means your candle's gone out, Isolde mutters, earning a ripple of tired laughter. The madam walks in, shaking her head but smiling despite herself. If I could read candles, I'd have retired, years ago. Still, she sits down and watches the smoke too, her expression unreadable. Do you believe any of it? You ask her quietly. She considers. I believe in patterns, she says. If watching the smoke keeps them calm, then it works. That's the heart of it, you realize. Survival here isn't about winning, it's about working, about tiny rituals, hidden caches, and whispered agreements that keep the walls from collapsing. A soft knock comes at the door. Everyone freezes. It's too late for customers. The doorman peers out, then relaxes. It's the baker's boy. He carries a basket, still warm, from the bakery down the lane. He says shyly, "Madam sent for dialed bread." The madam nods and pays him, but as he leaves, he slips her a folded scrap of paper. She reads it quickly, then burns it in the hearth. "What was that?" You whisper. She smiles faintly. "Just news. You want to ask more," but she changes the subject. "Tell me," she says, "in your time due, women still need to hide their money in candles." You hesitate. "Not exactly." "Good," she says. "Then at least something improved." She stirs the embers with a poker, sparks rising like fireflies. "Remember this," she says softly. "Everything we do here, every coin hidden, every lie told, it's not for greed. It's for another sunrise." Her words linger long after the others drift off to their rooms. You sit alone by the fading fire, listening to the soft creak of the house, settling, the occasional cough, the sigh of wind under the door. For the first time, you feel it, not pity, not horror, but awe. These women live on the knife edge of disaster, and somehow, they've turned survival into an art. And as the last candle smokes out, bending left, then right, before disappearing into darkness, you wonder whether the omen this time means danger or endurance. The next night begins with whispers. You feel it before you hear the change in air pressure. The way every conversation lowers by a few notes is the sound of anticipation. It's a kind that never means good news. The madam is dressed in her finest gown to night-deep crimson silk, the color of power disguised as elegance. Her hair is braided and pinned with brass combs, her posture straighter than usual. When you ask what's happening, she just says, "Company." Hour later, the reason walks through the door. He's a nobleman, or at least someone who dresses like one cloak of black velvet, boots that have never seen mud, and rings enough to ransom a small farm. His face is pale, almost delicate, but his eyes give him away. They're cold and assessing the way a butcher looks at cuts of meat. Everyone in the room straightens. The laughter dims. Even the music softens, switching from a jig to something slower, more refined. The madam greets him with a curtsy that's half genuine, half survival. "My lord," she says. He smiles faintly. "I was told you'll keep the cleanest house in this quarter." She inclines her head. "Clean enough for comfort, sinful enough for your liking." He laughs softly, approving. Coins jingle as he removes his gloves. "Then I expect the best of your company tonight." Shh. You watch the transaction unfold with quiet horror. There's no shouting, no bargaining, just a polite exchange of words that carries centuries of imbalance. The noble doesn't ask prices. He dictates them by existing. The madam gestures to one of the women, the pale braided girl from before. Her expression doesn't flicker. She curtsies and leads him upstairs. The room exhales again, but the air feels different now, tense. You look at the madam, who watches the stairs with a stillness you've never seen before. "Why her?" you ask quietly. "Because he asked for the quiet one," she says, "and because saying no would cost us all." Historians still argue whether noblemen visiting brothels were exercising power, seeking escape, or simply indulging the only form of equality money could buy. But standing here, you realize it's all three. An hour passes. The noise downstairs returns hesitant laughter, the clink of cups. The madam forces the atmosphere back to normal, her control absolute. But then a sound slices through, It is shout, muffled but sharp. The madam's eyes flash upward. She moves before anyone else can react, climbing the stairs 2 at a time. You follow, heart pounding. The hallway smells of lamp oil and roses. From behind the last door comes a scuffle, a cry, then silence. The madam opens it inside. The nobleman stands over the girl, face flushed, hand raised. He freezes when he sees the madam in the doorway. "This isn't part of what you paid for," she says, voice low, steady. He sneers. "You forget yourself, woman." "Kay," she says, "I remember exactly what I am. It's you who forgets what you bought a night, not a life." For a second, you think he'll strike her, but he hesitates, pride warring with practicality. After all, scandal is the one thing he can't afford. He straightens, fixes his collar, and spits on the floor. "This house is filth." The madam doesn't flinch. "And yet you came, Kay." He storms out, boots thudding down the stairs. You hear the door slam, the muffled gasp of the crowd below. The girl curls into herself on the bed, trembling. The madam kneels beside her. "It's all right," she whispers. "He's gone." But you can see it isn't all right. Not for her. Not for any of them. Later, downstairs, the madam pours herself a drink and sits heavily. No one speaks. The fiddler starts to play again, quietly, because silence feels too much like defeat. You ask, "Won't he cause trouble?" She stares into her cup. "Probably. But trouble comes either way. The trick is choosing the kind you can survive." Her words hang in the air. You realize that the brothel isn't just a house of pleasure or pain. It's a stage where class and power rehearse their endless argument. The nobleman walks away untarnished. The women stay behind to clean the mess. Literal and moral. A small commotion breaks the silence. Knock at the door, firm and fast. Everyone tenses. The doorman opens it slightly, then relaxes. It's one of the guards, the same who loitered outside before. He steps in, eyes flicking to the madam. He won't complain, he says simply. Said he found the service unsatisfactory and left it at that. The madam nods once, understanding the subtext. And your silence. He holds out his hand. She drops 2 silver coins into it. He pockets them and leaves without another word. The moment he's gone, she exhales. "There," she says. "That's the cost of peace tonight." You think about modern scandal tabloids, paparazzi, legal teams, and realize none of that will survive a day in her world. Here, justice is measured in coins and courage. The girl with the braid comes downstairs, pale but composed. She sits near the fire, her hands trembling just slightly. The barmaid offers her wine. She refuses, asks for water instead. Someone murmurs, "You were brave." She shakes her head. "No, just alive." Taya Madam gives her a small smile. "That's the bravest thing of all." Outside, the rain starts again, soft and steady. You find yourself staring at the window, at the faint reflection of the candlelight against the glass. It looks almost holy. It's like a stained glass window turned inside out. You realize the nobleman will wake tomorrow in a feather bed, unbothered, maybe even nostalgic for the night's adventure. The girl, meanwhile, will go back to work, her fear folded neatly beneath her smile. And yet, in some strange way, she's the stronger of the two. He wields status. She wields endurance. One collapses without the other's illusion. The madam catches your gaze. You understand now, you nod, that this place isn't just surviving its resisting. She smiles faintly. Exactly. In a world that worships power, every act of endurance is rebellion. The candle beside you flickers, casting shadows that dance like ghosts of all the forgotten women who once lived this same night. In this same fragile defiance. Outside, thunder rumbles again, far away this time, like applause from the heavens. The rain has become a steady rhythm again, drumming softly against the shutters. You've grown used to the sound. It almost feels like the city's heartbeat, slow and weary. But tonight, the air feels charged, uneasy. There's movement in the shadows of the street below. And inside the brothel, every whisper sounds sharper. You wake in the common room, curled in a chair by the dying fire. The madam stands by the window, watching the alley. Her silhouette glows faintly against the stormlight. Someone's missing, she says quietly. You sit up? Who? Alma? She answers. Didn't come back from the market this morning. You remember the young woman with the hidden stash under the floorboards? The one who said, freedom was possible if you had enough courage and coin. She talked about leaving. You. Murmur that the madam nods. They all do. Most don't try. The ones who do, she trails off. Sometimes they make it. The unspoken alternative hangs in the air. Hours pass. The women move through the rooms in silence, faces tight, glancing toward the door every few minutes. The madam sends the doorman to ask questions. He returns by dusk, shaking his head. Nothing. No one's seen her since morning. A candle sputters near the window, and someone mutters a prayer. Then the sound comes a shout from the street, followed by the rattle of wheels and boots. The door bursts open, and 2 city guards step inside, dripping rainwater onto the floor. One carries a scroll. The other holds something worse, Alma's kerchief. Dark with mud, the room stills. She's been caught, the guard says, stealing bread from a merchant's stall. That's not possible, the barmaid protests. She had money she'd never. She had coin. The guard interrupts. But when the merchant chased her, she ran. They caught her by the docks. Said she was headed for the gate. The madam's face remains composed, but her hands tighten around the edge of the counter. What happens now? The guard shrugs. Theft is theft. She'll spend the night in the jail. Maybe lose a finger. The barmaid gasps. You feel your stomach twist. Or the guard continues, lowering his voice. You could pay the fine. Of course. There's always a price. The madam nods curtly, reaches for her purse, and counts out the coins. Bring her back here, she says. The guards exchange glances. She need to be disciplined, one of them says slowly. You feel heat rising in your chest. Disciplined. For surviving the steers. For disobeying the law. The madam's eyes narrow. Leave the law to me. Take the money and go. They do. The door closes. The storm swells outside, drowning the silence that follows. You sit beside the madam. Will they hurt her? Maybe, she says softly, but not as badly as freedom would have. You want to argue, but there's no space for moral outrage here. Only reality when Alma finally returns. It's past midnight. Her face is pale, one cheek bruised. Her hands shake as she unties her cloak. The madam meets her at the door, helps her sit by the fire. Can't says nothing for a long time. Finally, Alma whispers, I almost made it. The madam nods. Almost never counts, child, but you'll rest now. You'll eat. Alma looks up, eyes rimmed red. I didn't want to die here. You won't, the madam says. Not tonight. That promise sounds smaller than it should, but it's all anyone can give in this world. The barmaid tends to her cuts, murmuring comfort. Someone fetches a blanket. No one speaks of the missing coins, though you all know she must have spent them trying to buy her way out. Later, when the others have drifted to bed, you and the madam sit alone by the embers. The room smells of wet wool and burnt oil. She was lucky, you say quietly. The madam snorts. You call that luck? She's alive. That's the barest form of it. You look at her. You've seen worse. She stares into the fire. You ever hear about Marin? You shake your head. She tried to run 2 winters ago. Thought she could join a traveling troupe. They found her on the road. Said she froze in the snow, but I think the guards caught her first. You swallow hard. Why tell me this? Because you still think there's a way out, she says. And maybe you're right, but not for us. Gust of wind rattles the shutters. You imagine Alma asleep upstairs, clutching that crescent moon pendant from her hidden stash. Maybe she'll try again someday. Maybe she won't. The madam rises, adjusting her shawl. We open again tomorrow. Life doesn't pause for tears. She pauses at the door. But remember her. If anyone ever asks why these houses don't vanish, tell them it's because leaving costs more than staying. She disappears into the corridor, her footsteps soft as confession. You're left alone with the dying fire. The smoke curls upward, faint and uncertain. Kay then bends twice before vanishing, a bad omen, if you learned anything. Outside, the rain has stopped. The street glimmers under the moon, slick as glass. You hear the faint echo of hooves in the distance. The city's shifting toward dawn again. You think of Alma's whispered almost, of the nobleman's arrogance, of the guard's greed. Freedom, you realize, isn't just about running, it's about surviving. It's long enough to remember what you ran for. You look around the room, at the chipped tables, the crooked stairs, the worn rug by the hearth. Somehow, despite everything, this house still stands. But for how long? Historians still argue whether medieval brothels offered women independence or simply another cage painted in warmer colors. Sitting here, you suspect the truth lies somewhere between a place where resistance and resignation share the same breath. The last ember pops softly in the grate, and the sound feels like a heartbeat. You whisper into the quiet. She almost made it. In the silence, deep and endless, seems to answer back. Almost. The night stretches thin. You can feel it, how the air gets heavier after too many secrets have been told. There's no laughter tonight, no songs from the fiddler, no dice clattering on the tables. Just the slow creak of the floorboards and the tired sighs of a house that's seen too much. The candles burn lower now, their wax spilling down like time melting in slow motion. You sit near the hearth again, watching the flame tilt sideways in the draft. Upstairs, footsteps move softly, girls returning from rooms. Customers stumbling out, half-dressed. The madam making one last round before dawn. You're still here. Somehow, you've eaten the stale bread, breathed the sour air, dodged the fleas, and made it through the shouting, the sickness, and the noble's visit. But now, as the lamps dim, you realize survival here doesn't mean escape, it just means waiting for morning without falling apart. A door closes upstairs, then another, and then silence. The madam appears from the corridor, carrying a small iron key on a ribbon. She places it on the counter. "Lock the door after me," she says quietly, going out. You ask, "Just the alley," she replies, "to pour the wash water." But she doesn't take a bucket. You suspect she just needs to stand in the cool air and breathe for a minute, to remember that the world outside these walls still exists. When she returns, her shawl is damp with fog. She glances around the empty room. "It's almost over," she says. "You can feel it, can't you?" You nod. "Feels like everything's holding its breath." Okay. She smirks faintly. "That's every night here, love." A noise interrupts her, something soft, like a whimper. You both turn toward the stairs. One of the younger girls, Mira, stumbles down, clutching her arm. There's blood on her sleeve. The madam rushes to her. "Who did this?" Mira shakes her head. "He's gone. Fell asleep. Then woke up mean." Her voice trembles. "I told him no, but he didn't listen." You feel the anger rise before you can stop it. "We should find him," you say. "Make him pay." The madam looks at you, weary but steady. "And who would we tell?" "The guards who take bribes from his kind. The priest who calls us damned." Mira starts to cry quietly. The madam holds her, stroking her hair. "Hush now. He's gone. You're safe." But she isn't. None of them are. Not really. Historians still argue whether brothel owners truly protected their workers or simply manage their suffering for profit. Watching the madam now, you realize it's not a simple answer. She's both jailer and guardian, saint and sinner. Bound to the same cage she built, you find clean water and a rag. Help Myra wash the blood from her arm. It's a shallow cut, but the bruise beneath it is deep, ugly. You tear a strip from your own shirt and tie it around her wrist. There, you whisper. At least it'll stop the bleeding. She manages a small smile. Thank you. Get some rest, the madam says gently. You've earned it. When Myra's gone, the madam sits beside you, elbows on her knees, staring into the dark. You see now, she says softly, this isn't a place of sin. It's a place of survival. People come here to forget, and we let them. But we don't get to forget anything. Her voice cracks slightly on that last word, but she doesn't look away. You want to say something comforting, but what words could possibly reach her? Outside, a cart rattles down the street, its wheels clattering like bones. Somewhere nearby, a church bell tolls the hour for, maybe 5. Almost dawn. The madam rises slowly. Go blow out the lamps, she says. The night's done. Could do as she says. One by one, you snuff the flames. Each wick releases a thread of smoke that curls upward like tiny ghosts rising toward the rafters. The room grows darker with every extinguished candle until only the hearth remains, glowing faintly. You notice the other girls emerging from the shadows' faces, pale, eyes tired. They move quietly, collecting stray cups, sweeping the floors, wiping the tables. It's a ritual, not of cleanliness, but of endurance. Myra hums softly under her breath, a lullaby from her village. You can't understand the words, but the melody carries something fragile and real, something that doesn't belong to this place. The madam leans against the counter, watching them all. Every morning, she murmurs, we start again. Same walls, same faces. And still, somehow, we pretend it's different. She smiles faintly. Maybe that's what keeps us human. You glance toward the shuttered windows. A faint gray light seeps through the cracks, tentative as a secret. The city outside begins to stir vendors, shouting, roosters crowing, the smell of baking bread drifting faintly through the damp air. You think of how different this morning feels from the one before. The night has taken its toll. Alma's absence lingers like perfume that won't fade. Myra's bandaged wrist catches the dim light, and the madam, her face looks older now. It's carved deeper by the weight of everything she's had to endure. She catches your gaze and says, almost playfully, still think you'd last the night. You laugh, but it comes out hollow. Barely. It's barely as good enough, she says. Most don't even get that. Her words sink in as the light grows stronger. The walls seem less red now, more brown and graphic colors of reality, returning after the glamour fades. The brothel looks smaller, humbler, like the illusion has worn off. The girls finish their chores, moving toward their rooms to sleep through the day. One of them stops at the window, lifts the curtain a fraction, and watches the sunrise. Pretty, she murmurs. The madam joins her, nodding. It always is. Doesn't last long, though. And as the first rays of sunlight spilled across the floor, touching the empty chairs and scattered bottles, you finally understand the truth that's been whispering through every shadow of this place. It's not that you wouldn't last a night. Here it's that the night itself never truly ends, even when dawn comes. Its ghosts linger. You stand to leave, but the madam shakes her head gently. Stay till the sun's higher, she says. No one should walk home looking like a sin the light forgot. You smile at that tired, grateful kind of smile. Outside, the bells ring again, sharper this time. The city wakes, unaware of the quiet tragedies that unfolded behind this door. And as the golden light creeps across the floorboards, touching your shoes, you realize morning doesn't cleanse everything. It just makes the stains harder to see. Dawn finally pushes through the grime-streaked window panes, flooding the room with a grayish, forgiving kind of light. You blink against it, half expecting the walls to sigh in relief. But they don't. They simply absorb the day. Same as they always do. The girls are already disappearing into their rooms, faces pale and ghostly in the morning glow. Their laughter, if you can call it, that is soft, exhausted, kind that comes from knowing the world outside keeps spinning whether or not you sleep. The madam moves among them with a mother's precision, closing shutters, dousing the fire, checking that every door is latched. You sit on the same creaky stool where you began the night, feeling the fatigue crawl into your bones. Your clothes smell like candle smoke and spilled ale. Your throat burns with the faint taste of cheap wine. You've seen enough to know the fantasy has fully dissolved. It's not the danger or the filth that breaks you. It's the quiet, this strange, heavy silence that fills the place once the customers are gone. You can feel every heartbeat, every whisper of exhaustion that threads through the walls. The madam finally joins you, lowering herself into the chair opposite. The dawn light draws fine lines across her face. She looks older now, yes, but also clearer, like someone you're only just seeing for who she really is. So, she says softly, "How was your night in paradise?" You let out a long breath. "I wouldn't call it paradise." She smiles faintly. "You do, but they all come anyway." She pours the last of the watered wine into 2 chipped cups and slides one toward you. The liquid is room temperature, metallic, unappealing, but you drink it anyway. It feels like ceremony. She looks toward the stairs. They'll sleep till noon. Then the merchants will come knocking again. The girls will paint their faces, and the laughter will start all over. She sighs. The same play, just different actors. Doesn't it ever get easier? You ask. She shakes her head. Only familiar. You stop hoping for better and start hoping for less worse. That's the real trick. It's the way, she says, it half dry humor. Half resignation hits harder than you expect. Historians still argue whether medieval brothels were moral failures tolerated by necessity or social safety valves meant to preserve the virtue of respectable women. But sitting here, the truth feels simpler. This place is a mirror held up to power, and what it reflects isn't in its need. You glance at the empty tables, the wax drippings hardened into shapes like tiny bones. Everything feels like a relic. You can almost imagine archaeologists centuries from now puzzling over this room, wondering who you all were, what stories were told here, how the laughter once sounded before it cracked. The madam follows your gaze. "They'll forget us, you know," she says. "The world always forgets the women who make its shadows softer." You want to tell her she's wrong, that history remembers, that people care, but you can't make your mouth shape the lie. Instead, you say, "Maybe someone will write about you. Tell your story." She chuckles. "Oh, I doubt that. No one wants to hear about tired women and their half-broken dreams. They want heroes. Or villains. We're neither." The sound of a rooster outside breaks the silence. Somewhere nearby, a baker opens his shutters, and the scent of fresh bread seeps faintly through the damp morning air. The city's coming alive again. The madam stands, stretching her back with a quiet groan. "You should go," she says gently, "before the neighbors see you leaving and start whispering." You rise, reluctantly. The floor creaks beneath your boots. At the door, she hands you something, a tiny sprig of rosemary tied with a red thread. "For luck," she says, "or memory, whichever you need more." You tuck it into your pocket. "Thank you." She nods once, then adds, almost teasingly, "You lasted longer than most." "Barely." You reply. "Barely still alive," she says, echoing her own words from the night before. Then she opens the door. Cold morning air spills in, carrying the scent of wet stone and horse dung and distant chimney smoke. You step out, blinking against the brightness. The street feels cleaner than you remember, maybe. It's because you're still standing on this side of the door. You look back once. The brothel sign swings gently in the breeze, its paint faded, its letters half rubbed away. but the red lantern hanging beside it still glows faintly. Even in daylight, stubborn spark, refusing to die. You start walking, boots splashing through puddles. Behind you, you can hear the faint clatter of bolts sliding back into place, the door closing. The city hums awake around you, vendors shouting, bells ringing, dogs barking. Normal life resumes as if the night never happened, but you know better. You carry the weight of it. Now the smell of the air, the faces of the women, the sound of whispered laughter trying to survive beneath everything else. You'll remember it long after the sunlight fades again, and maybe that's the point. Not to survive a night here, but to remember it, to honor the people who didn't have the choice to leave when morning came. You walk until the red lantern disappears behind the curve of the street. The world feels sharper, louder, almost too real. The cobblestones gleam with dew. A group of apprentices pass by, joking loudly, completely unaware of the small, tired miracle that took place a few streets away. You pull the rosemary sprig from your pocket, twirl it between your fingers. It smells of earth and smokes something living that refused to be crushed. And as the sun rises higher, you realize that maybe you did last the night after all. You're not unscathed, not untouched, but alive, changed, a little wiser, a little sadder, and far more grateful for clean air, hot water, and the simple grace of safety. The city stretches before you, bright and cruel and beautiful. You keep walking, and now, as the last echoes of that world fade, take a slow breath. Let the weight of the story settle. You've just walked through one of history's dimmest rooms, seen the faces behind the laughter, the ghosts behind the candlelight. But you also saw resilience, didn't you? The way people can carve tiny pockets of hope into places built on despair. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the air move quietly around you. The medieval brothel is far behind us. Now, its doors closed, its lanterns dim. You're safe in your room, centuries away from the noise and danger of those cobbled streets. The night there never really ended, but your night here is drawing to a close. The women we met, the Madam, Mira, Elma, they stay behind, frozen in that fragile dawn. You carried their memory for them, so they can finally rest. Outside your own window, the world hums softly. Maybe it's raining, maybe the fan's still turning, maybe the quiet feels heavier than before, but that's all right. That's what stories do. They leave a soft ache that reminds you you're still alive. So, take one last deep breath. The brothel fades, the city fades, the centuries fade. All that remains is the faint scent of rosemary and the warmth of the morning sun. Sleep well, traveler. You made it through the night.